Prime Field.
This week in women's college hoops, we got everything. A top 4 showdown in Vegas, UConn flirting with disaster, and then dropping a nuclear blowout. South Carolina looking downright unfair. Mid-majors pulling Rhode upsets, and a wave of sophomores basically hijacking the national spotlight. On top of that, we've got recruiting wins, injury updates, NCAA rule changes, and $1 million NIL tournament in Vegas changing the game. So buckle up, grab your coffee, and let's run through the 25 biggest stories from this week in the AP Top 25. We're starting in Las Vegas, where number 4 Texas just handed number 3 UCLA its first loss of the season. And it wasn't subtle. The Longhorns jumped all over the Bruins at the Players Era Championship, sprinting out to a 2010 lead and never really letting UCLA breathe. Rory Harmon was the engine, dropping a game-high 26 points and controlling the tempo from the jump. Madison Booker, Jordan Lee, and Justice Carlton all hit double figures, which is exactly what you want to see if you're thinking about Texas as a Final Four team. Not just one star, but a full committee of bucket getters. This wasn't just a good win. This was Texas planting a big early, we belong on that championship line sign in front of everybody. And Texas wasn't the only heavyweight flexing in Vegas. Same event, same building, different kind of statement. Number 2 South Carolina took a tight game against Duke and blew it wide open with a 26-12 second quarter on their way to an 83-66 win. Medina Oko led all scorers with 23. Joyce Edwards added 22. And what really pops is how they did it. Even with key front court injuries, this roster just overwhelms teams in waves. You can feel the size, the speed, the defensive pressure, and then the scoring just keeps coming. If you were wondering whether the Gamecocks could still bully high major opponents with a retooled front court, Duke got your answer for you. From dominance in Vegas to pure drama in Uncasville, let's talk about the game of the week. At the Hall of Fame showcase, number 1 UConn and number 6 Michigan gave us an early season classic. AZ Fudd caught fire, hitting 7 threes and finishing with 21 points to help UConn escape with a 72-69 win. But honestly, Michigan's Silas Swords may have stolen the show in a losing effort. 29 points, 8 threes, and she nearly dragged the Wolverines all the way back late. And then there's Sarah Strong, 16 points, 20 rebounds, 6 assists, 4 blocks, 3 steals. That is video game stuff. It's the kind of line that makes you say, okay, that might be the most complete player in the country right now. And if you like that kind of late game drama, we've got another one, this time with a buzzer beater. In South Bend, number 19 Notre Dame delivered one of the week's biggest gut punches, stunning number 18 USC 61-59. Hannah Hidalgo was everything. She finished with 22 points and 7 boards, and most importantly hit the pull-up jumper with 2 seconds left to win it. Notre Dame flipped the game with a 15-8 fourth quarter, clamping down defensively just long enough for Hidalgo to take over. For USC, that's an early, stinging reminder. Top 20 road games can go sideways fast if you let a star guard feel too comfortable late. Alright, from clutch shots to full-blown destruction, because UConn was just getting started. In their follow-up game at the Hall of Fame showcase, UConn didn't just beat Utah, they absolutely buried them 93-41. The Huskies came out like they were mad at the rim. 32-8 after the first quarter. Fudd stayed scorching, pouring in 24 points and going a perfect 4 for 4 from 3. Blanca Quinones turned the game into her own highlight reel with 21 points in just 18 minutes, and Sarah Strong added 15 more for good measure. The big takeaway? This isn't a grinded-out UConn team. This is a deep explosive offense where multiple players can hang 20 on you without blinking. Speaking of explosive offenses, nobody put up a prettier box score this week than South Carolina. Back in Columbia, South Carolina turned their game against Queens into a live-action scrimmage and an offensive showcase, 120-149. Joyce Edwards and Tania Latson combined to go 18 for 22 from the field. That is ridiculous efficiency. Medina Okud and Adhel Tak both posted double-doubles, and as a team the Gamecocks shot over 66%. If you're looking around the country wondering who has the scariest offensive ceiling right now, it's really hard not to point straight at South Carolina. But it wasn't all smooth cruising for ranked teams. Let's talk about a big mid-major upset. On the road in Raleigh, Rhode Island walked into number 16 NC State's gym and walked out with a 68-63 upset. The Rams closed the game on a 9-1 run, capped by a clutch go-ahead 3 from Vanessa Harris in the final 2 minutes. For NC State, that's now 2 home losses in 3 games, and the pattern is starting to show. Physical, veteran mid-majors are giving them real problems. This is one of those November results that the committee remembers in March, both as a nice feather for Rhode Island and a red flag for the Wolfpack. From an upset in the ACC footprint to a ranked showdown in the Caribbean. At the Puerto Rico Classic, we got a battle of unbeatens. Number 7, Maryland versus number 16, Kentucky. Maryland took control and never really gave it back, winning 74-66 behind 22 from Kayleen Schmeichel and 17 from Yarden Garzon. The Terps even stretched the lead out to 20 in the second half before Kentucky's late push. Kentucky takes its first loss of the season, but the headline here is Maryland's ceiling. This looked like a top 10 team flexing its balance, depth, and shot making. And while we're in Big Ten territory, let's check in on a post-Clark Iowa squad that's quietly figuring itself out. Number 11, Iowa handled Western Illinois 86-69, and the story wasn't just the win, it was who led them there. Off the bench, Addie Deal put up 17, giving Iowa another confident guard option. But Ava Heiden stole the spotlight again with 15 points and 10 rebounds, her fourth double-double already this season. She's averaging around 16-9 over the past month and has already scooped up both Big Ten and USBWA National Player of the Week honors. This is the template. Post-Clark Iowa leaning into a traditional center as their offensive engine. From a rising star in Iowa to a historic milestone in Knoxville. Number 15, Tennessee absolutely blasted Coppin State 88-35, and they did it in style. Nia Robertson went flamethrower mode, hitting a school record 10 threes and finishing with 32 points. Beyond the box score fireworks, this win was also the 1,500th in Lady Vols program history. One of those only a handful of programs can even dream of this milestones. It's a reminder that even as the sport evolves, Tennessee's legacy is still very much active. Speaking of programs trying to build or rebuild that kind of identity, let's head to Nashville. Number 17, Vanderbilt had themselves a stress-free week, rolling Alabama State 92-38 and Tennessee State 99-43 to move to 6-0. Aga Makurat dropped 21 against Alabama State. Michaela Blakes poured in 24 against Tennessee State. And the common theme is simple. These Commodores run and shoot. They're leaning into a high-tempo, high-volume 3 identity that turns routine games into blowouts. As they head into tougher Thanksgiving and holiday tournaments, this start has officially put them on the national radar. And they're not the only one creeping up the rankings with quiet dominance. Number 25, Washington just keeps stacking wins without a ton of national noise. This week, the Huskies beat Vermont 71-39 and added another comfortable rout over Southern. Savia Sellers and freshman Bryn McGaughy are handling the scoring, but what really stands out is the depth and defense. They're suffocating teams without needing a single 30-point superstar performance. At 5-0, Washington looks like it belongs in that back half of the AP poll, and the resume is starting to match the ranking. Alright, that's your on-court chaos. Let's zoom out and talk about the off-court storylines shaping the future, starting with a big recruiting win for the number 1 team in the country. Number 1, UConn isn't just dominating the present, they're loading up the future too. The Huskies landed a verbal commitment from 5 on its 11 Serbian guard Jovana Popovic in the class of 2026. She's described as a versatile perimeter scorer with FIBA experience, which fits perfectly with UConn's recent trend of pulling in international talent. Pairing a player like Popovic with a front court headlined by Sarah Strong gives Gino Auriemma yet another long-term backcourt piece to build around. And Popovic is part of a bigger national theme this year, because the kids are absolutely taking over. One of the big narrative pieces this week focused on the sophomore class, and it's hard to argue with the premise. Second years are driving this season. Michigan's Silas Swords is bombing threes on the number 6 team in the country. UConn's Sarah Strong looks like a do-everything All-American. South Carolina's Joyce Edwards is already a featured scorer. Iowa's Ava Heiden is becoming the focal point of a top 15 offense. And Baylor's Yuting Dung is anchoring both ends for the Bears. For a lot of AP top 25 teams, it's not the 5th years or grad transfers carrying the load, it's the 19 and 20-year-olds redefining what their programs look like. And one of those sophomores didn't just get love in an article, she picked up some hardware too. After back-to-back standout games against number 7 Baylor and Miami at the WBCA Showcase, Ava Heiden had herself an award sweep. She was named both Big Ten Player of the Week and USBWA National Player of the Week, which basically just puts a stamp on what the box scores already told us. Iowa is now an inside-out team built around her, with Heiden averaging close to a double-double and anchoring the paint. She's not just the next piece after Caitlin Clark. She's a legitimate All-American candidate in her own right. This is how you build a post-superstar identity. You find the next foundational player and let the system bend around her. But while Heiden's stock is climbing, Iowa had to absorb a tough blow in the backcourt. In that gritty 57-52 win over then number 7 Baylor, Iowa's starting point guard Chit Chat Wright took a major upper body shot and has since been ruled out with a concussion. Local reports noted that Iowa's offense really bogged down late against Miami without her on the floor. That tracks. She's the primary organizer, and losing your lead guard changes everything about tempo and spacing. The staff is now walking a tightrope, protecting her health while trying to keep Iowa playing like a top 15 team. In November, it's about patience. By March, they'll need her fully herself. Injuries aren't the only roster storyline, though. Some players are working their way back into the rotation. South Carolina also had a notable roster update this week. Sophomore guard Maddie McDaniel, who was suspended back on November 11th for some undisclosed reasons, returned to action and logged 12 minutes in that 121-49 win over Queens. Dawn Staley said the decision came down to McDaniel's improved communication and the support of her teammates. For a team already dealing with season-ending injuries to Chloe Kitts and Ashlyn Watkins, getting another capable guard back in the mix is a sneaky big boost for depth. Speaking of momentum, let's circle back to Nashville, because it's not just the women making noise there. Vanderbilt's women sitting at 6-0 and ranked number 17 would be a nice story on its own. But add in the men's team also cracking the polls, and suddenly the entire athletic department feels different. Blakes, Macarat, and Sasha Washington are being framed as the core payoff of Shea Ralph's rebuild. A guard-driven, pacey, confident group heading into the Paradise Jam against Oregon State. The national coverage has shifted from cute story to this might be sustainable. Vandy is officially in the spotlight, and now we get to see how they handle it. All of that feeds into the bigger national picture, so let's talk polls. This week's AP poll was less about shock and more about reinforcement. UConn held firm at number 1, with South Carolina, UCLA, and Texas rounding out a very scary top 4. Michigan's run of strong performances pushed them up to number 6. Vanderbilt's perfect start locked them in at number 17, and Kentucky climbed into the mid-teens after taking down Louisville. The interesting wrinkle? We're seeing more non-traditional blue bloods anchoring that 10-20 range. The brand balance in the sport is shifting, and while we're talking about identity, nobody's defined theirs more clearly than LSU. Technically just outside this week's date window, but still dominating every conversation. Number 5 LSU's 112-49 win over Alcorn State on November 20th gave them an SEC record 6 straight 100-point game. Behind Flauja Johnson, Malaysia Fulwiley, and transfer big Kate Koval, Kim Mulkey has fully embraced a pace and space, score-at-will philosophy. This isn't just LSU has talent. This is LSU telling the rest of the top 25, if you can't run and you can't score in the 80s or 90s, you're in trouble. Every future opponent is now game planning around surviving those scoring avalanches. Of course, explosive offenses are only part of the story. The rules of roster building themselves might be changing. On the governance side, a big proposal dropped this week. The NCAA Division I Council is looking at cutting the men's and women's basketball transfer portal windows from 45 days down to just 15. If this goes through, it would massively compress off-season movement. For AP Top 25 programs, that means staff will have to be even more proactive, more relationship building, more monitoring, more we're ready to move on day one mentality. The chaos wouldn't go away. It would just get squeezed into a much tighter window. And while we're talking about the changing business of college hoops, Vegas gave us a very literal look at the money on the table. The Players Era Championship in Las Vegas isn't just another early season tournament. It comes with a reported $1 million NIL prize pool per team, distributed directly to players. With programs like Texas, UCLA, and South Carolina in the field, this event feels like the blueprint for where top 25 women's basketball is heading. Big brands, big TV, big NIL money, and games that matter both in the rankings and in players' bank accounts. It's basically feast week for women's hoops, but with explicit incentives baked in. And speaking of Texas at that event, their success isn't just about this year's roster. Recruiting trackers this week were very clear. It's been a big stretch for Texas. The Longhorns locked in 2 top 10 recruits in the class of 2026, instantly boosting their future class rankings and reinforcing Vic Schaefer's long-term talent base. Analysts are already calling Texas one of the early recruiting winners among top 25 programs, right alongside USC, LSU, and UConn. So when you watch them knock off UCLA now, just know this isn't a one-year spike. The pipeline is loaded, and if you want a perfect example of how recruiting, development, and identity all tie together, look no further than Iowa. Another national feature this week zoomed in on Iowa's identity after Caitlin Clark, and the conclusion was pretty simple. This is Ava Heiden's team now. The Hawkeyes have shifted from perimeter bombing to a more traditional inside-first approach. They're running high-low action, feeding Heiden on the block and letting everything flow out of her presence in the paint. For a top 15 program that could have faded after a generational star left, this narrative, becoming due to back-bike awards and a 7-0 start, is huge. It says, we're not just a one-era story. And finally, as we move into the holiday stretch, all of these narratives are about to crash into each other in one place. Preview coverage of the Paradise Jam and other holiday tournaments has put a big spotlight on number 17 Vanderbilt, Kentucky, Maryland, and a handful of other ranked teams heading to neutral site events. These aren't just fun trips in the Caribbean, they're early proving grounds. Back-to-back games, quick turnarounds, and ranked versus ranked matchups that will shape resumes, pole positions, and even seeding down the line. If you want to see who's for real and who's just living off soft schedules, the next couple of weeks are appointment viewing. So that's your week in the AP Top 25. Texas and South Carolina making power moves in Vegas, UConn riding the Fudge Strong combo, sophomores hijacking the national spotlight, Vanderbilt and Washington climbing, LSU turning every game into a track meet, and the NCAA tinkering with the rules behind the scenes. Now I want to hear from you. What was your top story of the week? Was it Texas knocking off UCLA, Heiden's breakout, LSU's 100-point chaos, or something else entirely? Drop your pick in the comments, and tell me which team you think is most underrated right now. If you enjoyed this recap, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our deep dive breakdowns, film studies, and recruiting specials all season long. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you in the next one.
Prime Field